early March, we actually got queries from a journalist from Free Malaysia Today, Krishan. He had some questions for SecurityLAH because apparently, and in this email here, when he was pitching to us, he said SecurityLAH is the only group bringing up these issues in the media space right now. So he wanted to get our opinions on some of these matters. He sent in 4 questions.
Welcome. You are listening to SecurityLAH Podcast, Season 3.
Yeah, remember, guys? Basically asking us opinions about the data breaches that happened to MySejahtera, IP88, AirAsia, and also alleged cases of Maybank, Astro, and SPR. So that was actually one of the first questions that he sent to us, and an article has already been written about it. Something about experts decry lack of effort to fight cybercrimes, but we feel that we would like to also maybe dedicate one episode towards going into more detail about the questions and the responses that we had, right? So, you guys ready?
Yep, bring it on.
So, yeah, a frank conversation about the recent data breaches of MySejahtera, IP88, and AirAsia, and also the alleged cases. What you guys think about it?
So I'll take a stab at it first. In some of the instances that we've seen, for example, MySejahtera and IP88, there were multiple circumstances of what caused the issue is. And of course, in the case of IP88, technical details were not made available. Although the grapevine has a lot of very interesting information about how IP88 got breached, but we will not go into those points. Of course, bottom line, when you have data breach, everyone is going to start questioning on, what is the level of security that's put into place in these companies to prevent such a thing, right? Are they sufficient? Because I'll use one example, MySejahtera. That's an app that was mandated to be used by every single citizen of Malaysia due to COVID-19 as means of containing and tracking using the method of contact tracing. So everyone had to use it. And of course, the procurement issues of MySejahtera aside, there was nothing to say that the app was secure. It has gone through proper due diligence. It has been audited. Someone has checked to make sure everything is in the app actually is as secure as it's supposed to be, right? So how do we know that these services are proper and it is working the way it should be? So that's a concern. And if you notice, based on all the names that you've mentioned, Kat, let me ask you a question. Have you heard of anyone in any of these organizations going to jail because their data got breached?
Thank you very much for asking that question. The answer to that would be absolutely no. Absolutely no news about it at all.
Okay, fine. Now, did you also remember here, if any of those organizations that you've listed, has anyone been fined? Was anyone fired? Did anyone raise their hand and said, we toot up and, as a result, we take accountability and we will do whatever necessary?
They apologized a lot, but there was no accountability taken.
Even the apology was half-baked.
I have to say that I don't think those were apologies.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry if you are offended. Not
exactly.
I'm sorry because you are offended, or I'm sorry that you feel offended. No, I'm sorry if. So it's like, hello, what kind of half-toot Apology is that. Utter rubbish, man.
Yeah.
Seriously. Sorry, I had to censor myself. This one's a bit, it just got to me,
So
it-
that seems to be common, right? Whenever you have a breach, oops, we have made a mistake here. And then the first thing you do is apologize, regardless of whether it's half baked or fully baked or whatsoever.
And let me tell you this,
You
the
appease the
apology,
public.
no, and the apology only came in because they got busted.
Of course.
If none, nobody's going to come up and say, look, sorry, something happened. No, I take responsibility. None of that sort.
Yes.
It's, for example,
Because when you
Air Asia, right? Air Asia came public because the ransomware group literally dissed them. Literally told them, we are writing you guys off. So how are you going to say? What are you going to say? You're going to be like, oh yeah, we did had minor issues and all that, but sorry, you've lost that ground that you had. If you had taken a stab earlier and said, we discover some system irregularities, we are investigating on it, we'll come back to you in due time. Oh, okay, fine. And then you come back and say, yeah, we've identified that there was an attacker in your systems. We've done everything to make sure that the attacker has been put off. Your data is safe, or some data may have been leaked, and we will take whatever necessary precautions in the future to make sure such a thing doesn't happen again. And one of the things that you would do firstly is hire a CISO to say that, yeah, we take this matter very seriously, and we're going to have an executive at a very senior level in the organization now driving this initiatives to make sure that we do not go into this issue again. Now, from my understanding, none of these organizations have done that. I may be wrong though.
Dog, whenever there is such a thing, a breach, okay, it raises a lot of issues, privacy liabilities, and a lot of business risk. So the way I look at it, the actual capability is not there. So if there is a lack of actual capability, then they need time to be able to identify the actual root cause of the breach, and also need time to build it up. So the first thing you do is to address the public and to prevent a public outcry. Therefore, you definitely need to apologize first. But what and how much actually goes on behind that is a different issue.
Prof, here's the problem. There is no public outcry. Nobody's gone down to the streets demanding any of these organizations to ensure that the data is taken care. Have you ever seen a picket in any one of these companies to say, we want our data back? Right? Nothing, right?
Well, there's no public outcry, but at least there has been people talking about it. It's just that the voices are not strong enough, if I may say that. Okay?
Sorry to say, we are those voices that continuously raises this.
I think the issue is enforcement. I mean, I love this word because I keep saying it over and over again. It is because of the lack of enforcement which actually allows people to do it. It is like the little children that grows up, they will try to test and then they start pushing the line, until a point when they realize that nobody's going to, correct them or nobody's going to discipline them, then it's okay. So I don't need to worry about all these things unless it affects you personally. Like in the case of, if the money is taken from your bank account, then yes, I will have an outcry. Otherwise, it is somebody else's data. I mean, data only, nothing to do with my banking account.
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
That data that's stolen is the one that's going to give rise to the crime that eventually is going to lead for you to lose your money.
Correct. And the people doesn't know that.
Yes. So if your data is part of a breach, the bad guys can use that data, call you and then say, yeah, we know you went here. Like, for example, last year we spoke about how a country in Asia, if I'm not mistaken, was Thailand, whom immigration system was hacked, and data of everyone who's gotten a visa through their system is there. So, for example, someone can call up and say, hey, I know what you did in Phuket last year. Reminds me.
Case in point.
Reminds me of the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer, kind of thing. So it's like, seems like you were alone. Why wasn't your wife there? Ouch. Not really a nice conversation to have.
But Doc, I also remember commenting that is that going to stop anyone from going to Thailand?
No, nobody
No,
would. But that's
Yeah.
the thing. You see, as long as we keep hearing this even in conferences. In the recent conference, we went from the minister up to the guy who's sweeping the floor. We just heard the same sentence: "Data is the new oil," isn't it? But nobody seems
Yes.
to give data the respect that it should. When you keep saying data is the new oil, data is the new oil. Honestly, I
It's like-
wanted to ask the minister. You say data is the new oil, or it's better than oil, then why is the enforcement so poor when it comes to all these things?
Yeah.
So is
I
it right
agree
to
with you
say?
guys.
Please.
Go on.
Get- No, I just wanted to make a comment. If it's not my problem, then it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the public outcry that you guys talked about that I feel that we all feel should be there is actually not there. But there was somebody who was powerful enough. He kind of represented us, and he was I feel what do you call that? He was picked enough to take some action about it or make some comment about it, but he just stopped short of naming the parties that were responsible for certain things, like for example the Great Malaysian Telco Leak. Allegedly Numera, but there's also, I think it's a open secret that Numera was responsible. They should have been held accountable, but they were somehow let off easily.
Yeah, well, that's another example, right? You have a huge data breach that affected literally everyone, his dog and his cat, because of this leak, but no one went to jail. Don't know what happened. No ideas, right? Just
Is there sufficient coverage on this?
we don't know, because the thing is when I checked
only the first couple of days.
when I checked on the history of that case, it died off after a while. There was no further updates.
There was a suspension.
Yeah.
Suspension.
So what happened was that the person who sued Numera under public interest is now the minister.
Huh? Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't
He's
know
now
that.
the minister responsible for MCMC. So,
Really? It's him?
yes,
Oh,
it's his case.
wow.
I wonder what happened.
Well, I guess if we do get dear minister on the show, then probably we can ask him and say, "Hey, this case you filed, what happened? Huh? Gone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Because
yes,
I think the last part I read about the case was that instead of actually listening to the case, they took up to test whether the person who took up the case has local stand-by on the case, which means does the case has any bearing to himself as a person. So if it doesn't have any bearing to himself, then the case will not be filed because there's no issue. It's just someone stirring up some issues.
So Malaysia severely lacks disclosure requirements, and any breach that happens, only those who are close to the matter know about it. So it doesn't become public knowledge. So everything gets swept under the carpet. That seems to be the de facto standard lah in Malaysia
right now. But then things may change. We did hear that the minister is looking into tightening the laws or creating new laws. And again, the problem with laws is, as much as you think that it's going to help you, it may also backfire. So in the case of Malaysia, for example, if you do analysis of cyber laws and its use, Section 223 always comes into play. And if you read Section 223, it's going to say with the intent to annoy, harass, abuse, and all those kind of stuff. That means you misuse computer facilities or network facilities, right? If you see that in the proper light, things like cyberbullying can easily fall under that and you can take action, right? But also we've seen that the law is misused for other purposes, which people in the respective countries know how it's being misused.
Okay, is misuse because it's like not specific enough, or it's just too vague? That's why it can happen.
It is how the law is applied to. You see, you can't make a law too prescriptive. If you do, what happens is a lot of case will fall out of it.
They will also lead to people to find ways to overcome it, circumvent it. So and
Yes.
with that, it will lead to a lot of disruptive behaviors.
I
Yes.
see.
Great.
Correct. Let's go to the next point. What's the next question, Kat?
Okay, the next question that Krishan from Free Malaysia Today asks SecurityLAH is the efficacy of the announcements in the recent budget in helping to curb cybercrime.
Oh, so this is the one where I told him that you're bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact numbers for the life of me because it's been some time.
10 million budget to solve a leakage
budget-
of
the-
850 million.
Yes, exactly. So your budget is 10 million bucks. Your leakage is 850 million. And remember that the budget is both CAPEX and OPEX. So capital expenditure, operational expenditure. Capital expenditure refers to, for example, you want to build a new infrastructure, new capability, new systems. Operational expenditure would be things like your administration, your salaries, and everything else. So 10 million is actually quite little, if you ask me, very little. I still remember my annual budget is like 5 to 8 times more for a private entity that's covering
Yeah.
6 countries, whereas you're covering one country of 36 million people. And my customer base is nowhere close to that. So sorry to say, from a corporate guy who's done it, managed it, nowhere close. Right? Really nowhere close. Sky, you think the budget is reasonable at 10 million? I mean, you know infrastructure and stuff. What do you think?
I wanted to say
Laughs
my
first.
customer's name, but I better.
Better not.
I almost blurted it out. I mean, frankly speaking, the place that I work for, we are about to close a deal which is more than 10 million for cybersecurity in that one particular bank. Can you imagine one bank is paying 10 million for, and you're talking about the entire country spending 10 million for cybersecurity? That's madness.
I mean, literally, if you've heard my response and Sky's response, our summary is it's laughable.
Yeah, I mean,
seriously laughable.
No, I'm sure you would have spent more than 10 million a year for cybersecurity during your time.
I just told you, I spend literally 5 to 8 times more per annum.
Correct. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know if it is really 10 million. Kat, you must have your facts, But
No, seriously, it's here in black and white, 10 million.
my goodness.
So that's why we're saying you're bringing a knife to a gunfight, and you're bound to fail.
Reminds me of those Chinese movie. This guy bring a bring sword, and then he start, doing all these actions and all that, and then the 6 guys walk up and then take out their guns and point at the guy with the
So
sword.
who will be Stephen Chow's
Yeah,
that's why they say it's kung fu versus guns. There's always that famous thing where I think Bruce Lee or somebody will be like, "Oh, you bring a gun, I you." No, I think Malaysia is trying to do that, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere with that.
Yeah, but I think
Really?
one thing's for sure. Really, if you allocate that kind of money, the least you can do is you put enforcement to the rules and laws that you want to enact, because that's where you curb people. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere, seriously.
I'll give you an example. Sky, I give you one example. I was at the telco, and we discovered someone was having infected with a spam bot. Those days, email spam was a huge thing. It was so big that the whole country's IP address range was blocked.
I spam you, then you make you spam somebody else, and so on and so forth.
So it became so big that the whole country couldn't send email out. Literally, Malaysia couldn't send email out for a couple of months because every single IP was blacklisted. Those days used to be Spam House and Spam Report and all that. So anybody who's using those services will automatically blacklist Malaysian IP address. So we found one of the guys who was in our networks was spewing spam. He was having a lease line with us, and I called and I had a chat with him. You know what he told me after I'm telling him, "Hey, you have to do something with the service with that machine that's infected." Gave him the IP address and everything. So it's my machine. I'm paying money for the lease line. You just carry my traffic. That's the only thing you should do. Whether it's spam or virus, I don't care. You just carry my traffic. And the reason why that conversation could happen at that point of time was because there was really no laws relating to cyber. This is even before CMA came into play, So imagine that conversation going on, and the conversation is completely different today because we have some rules and regulations. It's just that we have to continuously refine it. It's not like you have one version of the law and then you say, yeah, it's perfect. Cyber evolves like on a daily basis, if not hourly basis. So how can we expect, anything to be lesser?
Yeah.
So 10 million against 850 million loss.
So efficacy, not so much. Yeah. Sky pointed out, if you want to invest that kind of money into cybercrime, then at least ensure enforcement is there. And I think that the third question that Krishan asked kind of plays into that as well. It nicely segues into also a little bit what Doc was talking about, policy and regulation changes that need to be made, especially in reporting instances of cybercrime in the corporate world. Comments?
I like to highlight the SEC's requirement for publicly listed companies in America that mandates reporting breaches within a certain allocated time frame. So if you have a breach, you have to report it. It has to be made public. Otherwise, action will be taken against the respective companies. So that's why you hear a lot of breaches happening in the US. It's not because breaches are not happening anywhere else as part of the world. It's happening literally every day in all other countries. The only difference is that none of them have a reporting requirement that says that I have to go up and say, yeah, I got infected, I got this, I got that, right? Now, the closest information, I'm referring to Malaysia specifically, the closest information you would hear about a potential problem is when MyCert or Cyber Security Malaysia makes an advisory and says, hey guys, look at this. Please take care of this, right? With very few information, and which for me personally, I feel that Cyber Security Malaysia should step up their advisory game in producing these advisories. But that's when we know, for example, CSM, MyCert, issued an advisory on Alpha V Black Cat, which is a ransomware group. That happened because, on a personal note, I knew that a credit reporting agency was affected. And also on a personal note, I knew 2 manufacturing facilities in North Malaysia was affected. One is well known, Western Digital, but interestingly, Western Digital did not specifically mention that their Penang plant was affected.
Enjoying the show so far? Subscribe now so that you don't miss out on the latest episode. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other platforms. Visit podcast.securitylah.asia to get the links to subscribe.
But Alpha V Black Cat ransomware had penetrated into the facilities. How did I know this? The staff were complaining they couldn't go to work. Not really a data breach, but it's more like people griping to me, hey, I didn't go to work today. Why you didn't go to work? Oh yeah, there's this Black Cat stuff on my office. Really? Then when I go and check, yes, Alpha V issued a notification about Western Digital. So it's makes sense. Yes. So yeah, so we don't have this fundamental law which requires organizations to report. And until you have that and until you enforce that, nothing's going to work. I mean, let's not go so far to a pie in the sky where we're hoping that they come up with a law for organizations to report breach. We already have privacy requirements. We have so many breaches. You're telling me the PDP commissioner cannot take any action? I don't think so. I think the law is pretty clear, and if necessary, they can use it. But the question is, you have all this nice setup in the world so that you can tell other countries, we have all this. We are ranked number 2 or number 3 in the world, for cyber maturity. Why? Because we have all this in place. We have all this setup in place. Whether the setup actually works is a different story. We have a privacy office, we have a cybersecurity office, we have the commissioner, we have this. it's so interesting if you look at cyber security per se. Let's look at Malaysia as a country. Yeah? You have the police, PDRM, that has some part to play in cyber security and cyber crime. You have SKMM, MCMC, the authorized regulatory body for telecommunications. You have NEXA, National Cyber Security Agency. You have a very little known document called Aran 24, which if you Google, you'll find a lot of information about it, which names MKN or the National Security Council as the lead, with the sector heads reporting to MKN related to matters on cybersecurity. And now I believe our dear minister is looking at another agency or empowering CSM to do this. And you also have Cybersecurity Malaysia, which is a non-regulated but governmental body.
That's confusing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In Singapore, CSA. Full stop. You have the other regulators, and the other regulators are now made to report to CSA. So you see how things are very clear in two countries that are just separated by a tiny little piece of water, right? In one side, you have all these parties, and that is why, to me, being in the industry for more than 25 years, 28 years now, whenever I see intergovernmental or intra-agency communication, it's horrible. There are so many parties, everybody is looking at their respective areas, everybody's trying to coordinate this, coordinate that. End of the day, the only thing that happens is karipap and teo.
Yeah. Can you imagine how frustrating it is for me for having trying to report about the cybersecurity landscape in Malaysia for 20 years as well. So it is, as you said, everything is so siloed. Everybody is doing their own thing, and then the only thing that's juicy to write about would be the number of breaches that we have and the data breaches that we have. And even then, also, it's frustrating because no decisive action is being done about it.
Yeah, it's like you hear from a grapevine, you go knocking on the door. Hey, for real? Yeah. And most of the time, when the grapevine tells you, to me, literally, it's like 99.999%, 5 sigmas of almost certain that actually happened. You know?
That's why I always refer to you, Doc, for any data breaches. If it came from you, then it most certainly happened.
I'm not data breach central. I like to be positive in my life, not just report on, oops, someone messed up. Oh, that fella fell off. No. I want to stay positive in my life. So yes, while I may hear about it, I still have to preserve some NDAs if I'm made to sign. If not, then I can share.
There are people out there who think I'm the central.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Intelligence central.
Yeah. Okay,
but
so
I am really not.
So what's the last question?
Okay, the last question is it ties in. I think it very nicely ties in all that we've been talking about. Like, what do you feel is the pressing issues in the industry, and who should be paying attention to them?
This I'm gonna get Prof to start because I know she has a lot of things to say on this.
On the contrary, I only have one thing: protection. Okay, so we have to make sure how we can protect the people. As all of you have shared just now, we seem to have a lot of things set up, enacted to protect, but then there is a lot of talk and hype. I would call it hype because I don't see the actual action, at least not effective action. So I actually had a question in my head: do we really have the capacity to get all this doing? Does Malaysia have the capacity? Otherwise, what if we have it, then why are we still facing these kind of issues? If not, then what went wrong?
I've already answered that question. It's if you look at that setup and the bureaucracy that it creates with that setup, I guess literally it's impossible for anyone to do cyber work in Malaysia.
Exactly. So you see, people have no choice. We give up a lot of our information, and we don't own our own information. In return, we have to give it up in return for some service. So ultimately, the people who are in power need to be responsible enough to really look into the issues and then to see how the people can be protected and safeguarded. We have a lot of commitment. There's a lot of talk. We are always in the forefront of many, many policies, frameworks, and so forth. But I would like to see some actual action and some results coming up from there. Otherwise,
like to
100,000 would not be enough. Even not 10 million, 100 million. I think it's just going nowhere. Sorry, please continue, Sky.
So I would like to actually. I mean, I know that we are also supposed to be responsible people, even while we are whacking, on all these things. But there's something that I think all of us can do, and I believe Malaysia has enough ability and qualified people to do it. And that is to actually go down to the grassroots and do some corporate social responsibility. I've been talking to a couple of banks already, and I've done one or two myself, to have this type of an hourly session with whoever who wants or takes the trouble to log in on an online session to do what we call security awareness briefing. All right. I've done it with the Malaysia Institute of Accountants, where all the accountants come in. And can you imagine these people are guarding our monies and they have no idea of anything that, why are people, is it okay to lose our data, the 42 million telco leak? Why does it concern me if Yahoo emails are being breached? They don't know. And some of them don't care. All right. Not because they don't want to, but they can't even connect themselves to all these breaches that they are reading. I'm calling some of these banks and even big organizations. They have their following. For example, if you're a bank, I'm sure you have account holders. If you were to do a weekly session with whoever of your bank customers who's willing to log in, like a CSR to the people, I think given it like probably 6 months to 9 months, if everybody start doing this, then we will have lesser aunties losing 30,000 to made apps, and things like that, because they would have known. I mean, we would have actually reviewed those kind of modus operandi of the scammers, the hackers, and all that. I hope that more people can step up. There are so many experts in our country today. We are definitely not lack of them. We just need to come up and do our part, just like many people are talking about helping the poor. And this is something that the cybersecurity market or the cybersecurity professionals can actually physically contribute to the country. Don't talk about the 10 or the 100 million. This is things that we can do without having to wait for budget to come.
You're absolutely right, Sky. And I want to highlight one thing. Today, when we talk about laws and regulations, it affects the citizens, it affects private entities. But government entity seems to be not affected at all, which is rather, I just can't brain this. I say, if you're serious about security, start from your home. If ministers were to come out onto the stage and say, yeah, cybersecurity is very important, we're making strides, we're making laws, but your own government agencies, you don't put that protection level, and you see data leakages happening willy-nilly, no action taken, no accountability, then what are you actually saying to everyone else? You lose that moral ground for you to say, yeah, we are serious about cybersecurity. Eventually people are going to say, yeah, lip service, but you're not sincere about doing it, because you know why? Yeah, your government agencies is exempted. What? Don't know what you guys are doing with the data, don't know whether it's protected, don't even know if the data is actually secured properly, because we've seen in the past how there's been incidences where PII information was left out in the open for weeks, if not months. That has happened. Yeah. So start with your own home first. Secure government agencies, secure government services. Show that you are taking that first step forward. Put the regulations in, get everyone to comply, and have enforcement. The thing is this, it's not that we don't have laws. To be honest, if I really look at the cyber laws and if I look at all other laws, there are laws that you can use. Yeah. Not to say you don't have. CMA, there's so many provisions inside there that you can use. But the thing is this, it's always easier and it's always more flamboyant to say, yeah, we are enacting another law specifically for this, or we are doing this, or we're doing that, rather than actually looking at it and say, hey, we could actually use this. This can apply, this can be tested for this particular scenarios. So that, and simplify this whole cybersecurity thing. If you ask me specifically for a country like Malaysia, it's not clear. I think the agency themselves are honestly confused. Even when I was in the industry and I was very close with SKMM, there was a lot of things that could have made clear, could have made easy, but for some reason, bureaucracy takes the first step more than anything else. So if you want execution, then bureaucracy has to take a back step. If you want everyone to be nice, willy-nilly and all that, forget about execution. No way execution is going to happen if you're going to have too many bureaucracies blocking the way. And that's a typical thing, not just for cybersecurity, but any other thing that's related to government agencies, which we are seeing for a country like Malaysia, for example.
In Malaysia, is this practical? Is this pragmatic in Malaysia?
The question is there will to do it? It always goes back to the will. Whether do you want to do it, or you're just going to say, yeah, we have so many moving parts. To give an excuse is very easy. To get onto the ground, get it done, and close it is where the gap is.
Yeah, the will has to be collective.
Yeah. So
otherwise,
if
there's
really,
not enough force.
Very simple. I can tell you a simple way out of this. If tomorrow PM makes a decision and says, I want you guys to sort these issues, these are the 5 key things you're going to do, I want to get an update within 30 days. And I don't care if anyone doesn't follow these requirements, they're out of the building. Guess what's going to happen? Things will change.
That sounds like a very strict police operation.
Doesn't have to be police. It's more of you set the direction, you tell people what you want them to do, you empower them, you give them the right resources, get them to do it. Right? Otherwise, we can always be here talking in the podcast very nicely about how things are all just messed up and nothing is moving, because that's reality.
I have a personal sharing to share. I just watched the movie today, a Malaysian-made movie called Police Evo 3.
Okay.
And the action and the how the police were running the operations and the missions and things like that. I was so impressed with the processes, the discipline, the efficiency, the effectiveness. And right now, during this podcast conversation with you guys, I can't help thinking that if our government agencies had half the processes, discipline, and efficiency and effectiveness that a Malaysian-made movie was portraying about our police, yeah, I think we stand a chance.
Cat, it's a movie. Entertainment.
Okay. And you're welcome to cut out this part, because it's like, you can cut out this part from the episode as well.
Okay, we can still have that. Don't worry. It's still interesting enough.
Put a target on my back.
Yeah, I remember when Doc was talking about and Prof, you're talking about the will to change and all that. You guys remember in 2016 when the Indian government abruptly wiped out cash transactions and make everybody go online so that there's audit trail for all payments?
Yep.
That's a very
bold move.
Yeah, very focused, bold move, It surprises everybody. And I was told that some jokers all of a sudden take all their cash in their house and started paying back all the loans with cash, because they realized that by tomorrow the cash is not valid anymore.
That's why I say the point goes back to will.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, running a country, you have million things that you need to work on, and cybersecurity is one of it. But if you're going to go to international forums and say, we are very focused on this, we want to keep our leadership and all that kind of stuff, then it goes back to action. What tangibly are we doing internally to make it better? So, for example, scams, right? Only recently, Malaysian government has created the National Scam Resource Center to specifically focus on combating that. Now, to be honest, yes, that shows that the government is focused on doing it, but it creates another level of bureaucracy now, because you have this center, you have PDRM, you have banks, you have all these other parties, and you have someone to coordinate and trying to do some work with all of them. So it points to things. Number one is that, do you need another party to monitor and big brother everyone and get things moving? Or are you indicating that this failed because nobody's talking to each other and everybody's just looking at their own areas, and you need someone to talk to all of them and then report back to the Prime Minister or the Ministry of Finance on the effectiveness of solving issues related to scam? I mean, of course, there's tons that I would like to say about the whole issue about scam and how the government has handled, other agencies have handled it, but but that's reality. That's how we are seeing it.
Exactly, Doc. That's why you see, even though you say will, but to me, if there is will, it's just going to end up with a lot more bureaucracy. That's the execution and implementation, the manifestation of will when it comes to the entire nation. Not that I want to be a wet blanket, but it's just that we have a lot of capacity, but they are segregated. They're not working together.
Yeah, because everybody has their own KPIs to meet.
Yep. End of the day, it's the pragmatic way is to take care of themselves first.
Imagine what would happen. I mean, just a discussion. Imagine what would happen if each of the ministers have a KPI to ensure there's zero data breaches. And if there are data breaches, then, just say their annual bonus gets cut by 10%. What do you think would happen if that was implemented?
Then we'll start to get more business.
I think they will they'll fuzz the number up. Honestly,
So you see, so for example,
case with that, I have the same opinion that I had with the COVID numbers right early on when we talk about it. The question is that are the data that is released to us something that we can really fall back on? If you have a KPI, that's fine.
So I'm going to give you an example. The meaty data leak, right? Widely reported, everyone knew about it. You can't hide it, right? It was carried by all the major news agencies, and everyone knew that, meaty had a data leak.
That's because they can no longer hide it.
That's my point. Data leaks you can't hide. If it's leaked, it's leaked. And
yes, it's leaked. But there are other things that you can still, make it a bit fuzzy. Blur it a little bit here and there.
The KPI is zero data breaches. I'm not talking about anything else. Zero data breaches.
Which government would set such a KPI for the ministers?
No, we're not talking about that. Theoretically, if they do set, then what happens?
That's not pragmatic. If it's theoretical, then it's not pragmatic.
Not necessarily. You still can. I've seen organizations, large organizations in Malaysia, one of their KPI downline to all their C levels is they have a percentage that their infrastructure systems and everything they do have to be
Percentage has
secure.
a certain number of tolerance. It's not the same as zero.
No. Percentage means you lose that percentage, and when you lose that percentage, you lose bonus.
Yeah,
It's
so that's
clear-cut.
the tolerance. There's a very clear trade-off there.
Yeah.
If you want it, then you try. So but it's not doable.
It's doable. It is doable. The
I don't
question
know.
is
Tell me
whether
which
you
one.
have the will. Whether you have the will. Because I've seen organizations do it. They are serious about security, and they're willing to take a top-down approach right up to the board to say that we will take a hit if there's a breach, and we will make sure that everything is done.
Then talk about workplace implications. An organization that has such a KPI, and then we call that having it packaged very nicely as will.
No, you see, the thing is,
I think they would execute it.
There was an introduction back in 2011 and 2012. There was an introduction. Somebody made the comment that because you see, a lot of guys are always very good in saying this needs to be done, that needs to be done, but there is never specific actionable goals to be done.
Right.
And
Yes.
not measurable. You cannot say, I'm going to do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and by what date and all. So it's always the case. So back in 2011, 2012, as I recall briefly, there was a call for all the government agencies to be ISO 27000 certified. Everybody was like, wow, okay, let's go for it. Allocated budget and all that. Because that was the first start. Because somebody has to measure. How do you measure whether I'm doing things correctly? So they say, okay, everybody has to go. Now, 11 years down the road today, there are still agencies who has never even started their process of ISO 27000. Now, where do you think the problem is?
Sectors, not just agency, yeah, not just agencies, but sectors,
Sectors, yeah.
whole
Yes.
sector
The entire sector, yeah.
that was identified as critical national information infrastructure did not even follow that executive order by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, exactly. So the other second thing is, I remember my 9 years in oil and gas. Whenever I visit a plant or even an office, sometimes they will have this very big LCD panel that tells you how many days since the last incident. Now, can you imagine if we have this station in every sector or agency? But we now look at cyber incident, not those oil and gas style incident.
Okay.
But they have a target. When I talk to the operation guys, they say, "What do you do this?" I mean, for everybody to see. He said, "No, we actually have a target that when we close the year, if we hit that threshold, the target of not having more than 2 incidents in how many days, the team actually gets a bonus."
Carrot and stick.
Yeah, carrot and stick. If you don't, then you will have to do a showcase. Why did it? You could do a RCA, root cause analysis, to find out who has failed, and then somebody has to answer. And that's what happened in the oil and gas industry.
Okay. But is it doable? Is actionable, right? Is it measurable though?
It will be measurable. You set a goal. For example, like Doc say, 0. Okay, maybe not 0 incident, but below 3 incidents or below 5 incidents. Because if you are certified in ISO 27000, there is a process where you need to report every incident, and it is audit trailed. So you actually record those incidents. At the end of the year, you are being reviewed by the audit.
Yeah, I've always wondered about, like, to what extent targets and KPIs around cybersecurity is measurable, because it's like trying to claim for cyber insurance, right? And before the insurance company will allow you to claim that claim, you have to do everything. The organization has to do everything in its power to prove that they have done all they can to protect themselves and to protect the data and to protect the assets which they want to protect. And yeah, how successful is that? How successful has it been for any organization to claim cyber
Just a couple
insurance?
of back, I had the privilege of having an experience with one particular bank that actually had a data breach, and then this product vendor was actually chosen and given the what do you call it, the award to implement the endpoint solution for the entire bank. And sorry, not a bank. This one is a software developer. So, but they develop software for banks. So this particular software developer, all of a sudden, kena ransomware. All right. And then they said, "Hey, your brochure says that if I get hit, I can claim up to $1 million." All right. Then the vendor came in and then he said, "Okay, can you please read the terms and conditions?" It says here, it only applies if the unit that is the first entry point or the unit that's affected has our agents installed inside. And that particular PC didn't have the agent installed because it was an old operating system and cannot be installed with the protection.
I feel sorry for them, man.
Yeah. And there was no case because it was written clearly there. So this is what I mean. You if you talk about cyber insurance, it's going to be a long night, man.
Yeah, I think we'll take it into another episode when we get into cyber insurance, because there's a lot of nuances involved in that matter.
I was doing due diligence by an insurance company via some insurance organization. The stack of documents we have to fill up, the Excel file has like 12 tabs, and each tab has got like, I think, 60 lines of question, and the questions are not single line questions. The questions are like question 1, and then you have A, B, C, D, E, And then question 2, again, you have ABCD. Tons and tons of things. But a lot of them are actually related to ISO 27001.
Yes.
I realized that if you are a company that's certified to ISO 27000, all of a sudden, 6 of the 7 tabs are automatically addressed.
Yep.
So that's why I said, the initiative that was done in 2011, 2012 was something that was very, very positive. I mean, we call it as it is. If it is good, we have to say. But the thing is, after that, there was no enforcement. Nobody went in to check if everyone... Actually, I also wonder, because the budget has been allocated, what happened to the money for the certification? If they are not certified, where did the money go? Which... I don't know.
Well, that's a different story altogether. Right.
Yeah, man.
That's a different story altogether.
We're still on the second topic.
Yeah. Let's stick to the topic.
Yeah. I think we've gone through thoroughly
Yeah.
on the questions, and I guess we've gone up and above whatever the interviewer had asked us related to this. And the news has already been carried out, so our responses are there. It's just that we felt that, as a podcast and as all the hosts, we owe it to our listeners to explain. Obviously it's just a very small, simple news article, but to put context into why there were certain points that were elaborated there was something that we owed to our listeners. We want to make sure the listeners hear us and understand the point of view that we come from, and why there were certain points that we really wanted to emphasize, in hopes that the article as well as this information reaches the right level of people so that they could take the necessary action. Okay, so with that, we will call it an episode. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thanks for joining us this week on SecurityLAH. Make sure to visit our website at securitylah.asia, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show.